This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome to episode 43 of the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal. With me, my good brother, good friend, and the DCAU Review Twitter guru. That's his official title. It's right. Liam.
I'm going to get a monogrammed name tag.
It's going to be a lot to fit on one name tag.
I agree.
It's going to have
a lot
to
of
be
sewing.
So much sewing happening.
Better learn how to sew.
Yes.
That's the other thing.
Get on that. Liam, we as we announced last week, we have stepped away from the futuristic streets of Gotham, and we have moved back into the world of the Justice League. So we are picking back up. It just so happens to be, we decided we're not going to go in order, but we decided the next episode is going to be in order. That is Injustice for All, parts 1 and 2. So this is an interesting episode. I had kind of forgotten that this episode existed until we looked at the available episodes next. Because it seems like World was on the horizon, and Paradise Lost, which are both episodes that I think we've seen a combined 357,000 times.
Back in the days of videotapes, where we would watch. We didn't have cable growing up, so our grandfather would tape these for us off of Cartoon Network. And the ones we had on tape were definitely World. I think we had World Part 1. I think we had all of Paradise Lost. But we were lucky enough to have this one on tape.
Yeah, it was, and I remember when we watched it for the first time, being excited. Luthor is on it. Mm-hmm. You get you start introducing these other characters, Ultra Humanite and Cheetah. Solomon Grundy makes an appearance. Mm-hmm. Who we knew from seeing the old covers of Detective Comics,
mm-hmm. And the Super Friends, of course,
and Super Friends, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Then Cheetah and Star Sapphire and these other characters start getting introduced, and then of course one of our old mainstays, old favorites, shows up towards the end of part 1, that being the Joker. And what do you know? You have yourself a bit of a Legion of Doom, per se.
Yeah.
Injustice League, whichever your fancy.
The Injustice Gang.
Yeah.
As I believe Grant Morrison called it in his run.
There you go. So Liam, let's jump into plot here. So we talked about it way back when we did World's Finest, that there was a little bit of foreshadowing that came into play later on in the DCAU review. There's a quick throwaway line. They talk about the guy that owned the Jade Dragon in that episode, that he had died from, or the owners.
They mentioned a couple of the owners had died. I don't know if they specifically say of cancer,
but
of illness related to the radiation it was giving off.
That's what they implied, yeah. So they tied that into this episode. Luthor, at the beginning of the episode, has finally apparently bested Superman. Superman gets him to confess to how he was able to best him, and then it revealed that John Jones is impersonating Superman, only for Luthor to have a seizure. And we learn that Luthor has blood poisoning. And next thing we know, Luthor's in jail. He's hooking up with... No, that's a terrible choice of phrasing after I say he's in prison. He then forms a relationship. Forms a relationship. Yes. And
he agrees to work with the Ultra Humanite.
Thank you for correcting that. He works with the Ultra Humanite.
Purely business fashion.
Please.
Purely professional.
For the love of God. It doesn't start getting weird with Luthor till Brainiac's involved later on. So we'll talk about the weirdness there later. But, so Luthor then decides he's going to pay all these villains to kill the Justice League. As he puts it, a simple task.
Yes, destroy Superman and destroy the rest of the Justice League. Which... I will say as a plot, because obviously later on in part 2, they do introduce the part where Humanite makes him like a vest that's going to help, I guess, absorb some of the radiation from his blood, which will hopefully keep him alive longer. But at the time, it seems like Luthor thinks, I'm probably going to die soon. I want to see the Justice League die before I do, basically.
Right.
So that's kind of Which is a solid, like, supervillain way of thinking.
Some
like,
good motivation.
He's not like, I want to get my affairs in order, I want to, I want to donate all my money to charity, or he wants to...
use his money
kill his enemies.
To kill his enemies, that's right. Yeah, so, I mean, I like this episode. I think because it was one of our favorite episodes that we had on videotape. Kids, if you don't know what a videotape is, just Google it. Because we had it on videotape, it's near and dear. But looking at the plot, it is, I don't know. His big idea was to blow up the watchtower.
Well, that almost comes later. Once Joker enters, he reveals that that Batman put a tracer on Luthor. And then from there, they're like, all right, we're going to lure Batman, and then we're going to steal his utility belt and get his Justice League garage door opener, and then go up to the watchtower and blow up. Which is like, okay, the explosion would probably kill, like, Hawkgirl and the Flash. And I guess being in the vacuum of space, maybe that would... It's like, you'd think, like, there would be something expressly, like, Superman killing... But as far as we know, it was just like a bomb, like a big bomb.
Right.
So, I don't know if that's like the best way of killing the entire Justice League, but maybe the thought was, well, even if Superman survives, he'll have to come down and fight the entire Legion of Doom by himself at that point. But
they don't say it, but maybe the radiation, the blood poisoning got to Luthor's brain.
He is very manic in this episode. He's very over the top. He's just snapping at everyone left and right and... insulting everyone. So yeah, maybe he's not thinking exactly clearly either, but...
While it is a fun episode, I will say it's a fun episode.
Yeah.
Doesn't speak anything against that. As far as the plot making a whole lot of sense to me, I felt like there were some holes.
This is not the height of their creative juices. It's mostly, we get some villains, we get some heroes, they fight.
It's the equivalent of mashing your action figures together.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 6 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right in that same ballpark. I'm at 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Thought it's not, again, not bad by any means, and obviously, as we mentioned, it's all the way back, it connects us back to World's Finest, and you get a little bit more of the Joker-Lex dichotomy. It's very clear that these two characters know each other. And
don't like each other.
I mean, Joker loves harassing Lex, and Lex just hates the Joker so much because of their previous dealings.
Right.
So it's kind of cool to have those throwbacks, and obviously Lex having cancer and sort of becoming more of a traditional supervillain for most of the Justice League run. That's all significant stuff, but that's all kind of big picture stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at these episodes individually, it's fine. Like I said, 5 out of 10, nothing awful, but certainly nothing that, from a creative writing standpoint, that you would really lose your mind over.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to our next category. Let's talk about some animation and visuals. I know you have a couple thoughts on this. I'm happy to talk about it too, but I'll let you start. What were your thoughts on some of the visuals here?
I think, and part of this, as we mentioned when we first covered Justice League, is some of these designs are not necessarily off-model, but they don't look the same that they do later on in Season 2, or certainly not in Unlimited. So they kind of look off-model a little bit. And there's also a lot of light in this episode, not necessarily daylight, but Green Lantern's ring or the kryptonite is like illuminating the room in the first scene.
Yep.
There's a scene
that whole first scene is
the
animation
it's
is
real bad.
Trash.
And then,
I'm sorry.
And then there's a scene later where Batman's saving a little girl from a fire. Again, it's very bright. And then specifically, like, there's a lot of Batman, and Batman doesn't look particularly like good in this episode.
His eyes keep looking real tiny and
his
weird.
Chin's like he looks like he's lost weight, but only in his face.
Yeah,
like his jaw isn't as particularly square as I'm used to it being. So again, these are kind of minor things. I don't think any of it's like particularly awful, and a lot of the fight scenes between the villains and the heroes are well done. But we actually talked about this. It's like you have to keep cutting away from like the more exciting fights. Like you have a Wonder Woman fighting Star Sapphire, or Superman fighting Grundy, and then we have to cut to watching like Hawkgirl fight Copperhead.
Right.
And it's like, that's kind of not as exciting. So
yeah.
It almost maybe would have been, as cool as it is to have all 7 Leaguers, maybe if you could have maybe like Martian Manhunter and a couple of and Hawkgirl could have sat this one out, and we could have had like a little more focus on those action scenes.
I was going to say, contrast this with, I know we haven't watched it yet, but the episode later on where they fight whatever the next...
The Secret Society?
Yeah, the Secret Society on the football field.
Yeah.
And that's done really well, from my recollection. Again, I haven't seen it in a couple years, but from my recollection, that fight scene is done really well, and you do have the significant portion of the Uyghurs there fighting. But, it's... Yeah, I would agree with you. I think also they felt almost a little bit claustrophobic because they were... it all took place inside this weird, like, rip-off Disney studio or something.
It was like a studio, but like a store. Because there's like a lot of giant like statues of cartoon characters, including the Wonder Twins and a duck who might be from Tiny Toons, but I'm not sure.
There's definitely a Mickey Mouse ripoff. Like there was some weirdness there.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it felt claustrophobic because that was like the only, lack of a better word, that was where the major set piece was. So it felt like they were contained a little bit in that area. So
we did get a return of my favorite Joker weapon, the exploding marbles.
There you go, absolutely.
I did like seeing also like a Batman villain. He is able to get away from both Wonder Woman and the Flash in sequential order, which is again the flip side of Batman generally being able to fight with these superpowered types. Is that Joker is also probably a little more cunning and a little more forward-thinking than a lot of villains that either Wonder Woman or the Flash have fought up to this point. So.
That's fair and true. We also haven't talked about it yet, but this we did mention it before we went on the air. This is the first episode with the return of the new look Joker.
Correct.
Obviously, it did make an appearance during
Return of
the Joker, which we have not covered just yet. But this is the first appearance that we would be talking about. The revised new Batman Adventures Joker, which is good. He's far more expressive. It's a lot less weird looking, I would say.
His
definitely
eyes are back to like more of the original animated series. He's got the diamond eyes again.
His expressions are more similar to the original Joker from Batman the Animated Series, as opposed to the off the wall cartoony, outside the box look that he looked in New Batman Adventures. So that was a plus for me. I don't think I've mentioned it yet. So my animation visuals, my complaint was definitely with the animation. That first scene where the whole scene is lit by the green kryptonite is bad.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the episode, all the colors to me seemed very muted.
Yes.
And it's difficult because we're going from episodes like Batman Beyond where the characters have very distinct, even the dark characters like Ink have bright blue highlights, or you have Spellbinder who has a bright red, and it contrasts very well with the darkness.
And I think some of that comes from we're now into the shows that use the digital color palette, and so the blues are a lot brighter just because it's just different. It's done differently.
Right.
So whereas you might be able to use just a more muted color palette that would stand out, or there would maybe be a little more, they would draw it on maybe like a darker shade of paper or something, like they did on the original Batman the Animated Series. Whereas these are all, like, there's all like a certain color, so if they want something, they almost have to go a much darker color out of their digital palette than they would, where they could just sort of darken it a little more meticulously. Before the advent of the digital coloration.
Yeah, and it's you try to compare fairly between the digital and the original hand drawing animation, but it stuck out to me that everything seemed very muted, and it seemed like that was missing in this episode, especially when you have such a colorful rogues gallery.
Yeah,
and everybody just kind of blended together. As far as the only one who stood out a little bit was Star Sapphire.
Yeah,
because she has the bright magenta or pink or whatever. Sapphire, I guess. Yeah, but because of that, and because the animation was not up to snuff, I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I also gave it 5 out of 10.
All right.
Like I said, there's nothing, with the exception of that first scene that we've talked about, there's nothing particularly awful, but it just, you can tell also that maybe they just haven't completely found their footing yet.
Agreed.
And I think as we get into the later episodes, because there's plenty of episodes in broad daylight later on in the series that look great. So I'm not too concerned about it. But yeah, it's just, it's certainly, again, for the scope of the episode, it could have certainly been a lot better.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to music, Liam. I don't have a lot to say about the music. I know that you have a couple of points here. I think it was fine. It didn't offend me. I'll let you talk about the one, I think, part that we both agreed on was pretty awesome. I think that they're still finding their footing, still early on in the series, still trying to find out the best place. I would say it's improving, especially going from the lack thereof in the very first episode to where we are now. But again, you're comparing across shows now and recognizing the pivotal place that it falls into, the Batman Beyond or Batman the Animated Series or Superman. Whereas when you get here to this point, it takes a little bit of a back seat. It's not as much. It's more dialogue heavy. It's more story focused than it is about the things that surround it. It's not a live orchestra. It's not. The focus isn't as much on the music. So it's not offensive. There's a great one part that I think brought up the score a little bit. I gave it 6 out of 10. What about you? By your laugh, I can tell that you gave the exact same score. Is that correct?
I did, in fact, also give music 6 out of 10.
All right.
I think as you alluded to, the moment we get, almost in sequential order, we get a little bit of, as the heroes are sort of wrapping up most of the villains, we get the Justice League main theme plays, and then we go to the scene where the Joker is about to confront Batman, and Batman sort of reveals that he's gotten free, and we finally get a little bit of the Shirley Walker Batman theme, which we really haven't heard up to this point in these early episodes. We
actually commented that it was missing.
Yes, multiple times places. In the definitely in Enemy Below, and definitely in Secret Origins as well. So I thought that was like a really, really good moment to hear that classic theme again. And again, get Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill a little more face-to-face time was cool. And obviously we'll talk about that in a minute. But the music playing those classic themes behind it, I thought did help it. And as you said, it's not offensive for the rest of the episode. But that's definitely the standout moment. We talked about that just last week with the Disappearing Ink when they brought back the old Batman theme for that episode. It's always cool to have those little, again, it just gives them that little bit of that extra little thread of continuity.
Absolutely.
And to remind you that this is the same character that we've been watching since 1992 or whatever.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we wanted to give an extra special long time here for you. To work on our final category, which is voice acting. We know we have a ton of people here because of the sheer amount of... you don't even have to go into the Justice League regulars that we've already covered here, just because there's so many members of the Injustice gang or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, we can... some of these I'll do rapid fire, and then we'll get to the ones that are actually kind of more of note.
Sure.
We had Stephen McHattie as the Shade. That's a fine job. Not great, not a lot is asked.
By the way, I love that his character, I'm not sure if he's supposed to resemble Howard Stern or Slash or both, but I love that they gave him the tiny circle sunglasses.
And the top hat. That tells me probably Slash.
Probably Slash, right? Yes, right.
That is probably, that goes a little more into visuals as well, but definitely more interesting character design. We have Efrain Figueroa as Copperhead, which I just want to mention because that is a dope name.
There you go.
We have Jason Marsden as Snapper Carr making an appearance.
There you go.
And then as far as the rest of the Injustice game, we have Olivia Dabo as Star Sapphire, who's, of course, worth mentioning because she also plays Melanie Walker /10 in Batman Beyond.
There we go.
Also goes on to play Morgan Le Fay in later episodes of Justice League.
There you go.
So a veteran of the DCAU here. And then the big leads, obviously, are... Ian Buchanan as Ultra Humanite, and you kind of weren't a huge fan of his portrayal.
So it's weird because this is the first introduction into the DCAU of Ultra Humanite, and it's the version that is half gorilla, half scientist.
Yes. So a little short history lesson: he was at one point a bald man in a wheelchair,
right?
Like an evil version of Professor X, I guess. I think is maybe what they were going for. Although I think Humanite came first, actually. But
But we don't even get a backstory for him.
He's already
Justice
a gorilla
League.
in prison.
He's a gorilla that talks, that has a giant brain. That's all we know of him. And he talks very matter-of-factly. And he's supposed to be an intellectual. I get that. Mm-hmm. But his voice, I don't know, it almost doesn't match. And you compare it, the only thing you compare it to is the other talking gorilla on the show, who is casts a very large shadow, that being, of course, Powers Booth, playing Gorilla Grodd. So it's hard not to compare the two of them. He's fine. He's fine as Ultra Humanite, but I don't know. I think that they could have done something a little bit different to mix things up than just having a standard human voice as a gorilla talking. So
yeah, I think that's fair. And obviously the top two, as far as the villain department goes, we get Clancy Brown back as Lex Luthor. Mm-hmm. He does more talking than anybody else in this episode.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, you already mentioned that he plays a more manic version of Lex, but you also mentioned before we went on the air that you felt like he maybe is still finding his footing as playing a different... He's not the conniving, behind-the-scenes puppet master Lex anymore. This is... I'm an arch supervillain now, and I'm... crazy.
He's more desperate. He's more out of his mind, as we mentioned, because of he thinks he's going to die soon,
right?
And he just wants this revenge before he goes, basically. And he's very good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he could play this role in his sleep. Mm-hmm. He's solid. Obviously, we get the return of Mark Hamill as Joker, who's very much just a supporting role here. Mm-hmm. He shows up. He has the scene where he shows up and where he knocks out Batman with the bag of rocks.
Yeah.
At the end of part one, it's great because we get one traditionally great Joker laugh, where it starts low and then it builds to the big crescendo, and then you get the final confrontation between Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy at the end of the episode of part two.
But you also have Mark Hamill pulling double duty in this
true.
episode.
Thank you for reminding me, because he also plays Solomon Grundy.
That's right.
They put some sort of heavy effect, and I'm going to be interested to watch the later episodes with Grundy, because I don't feel like the effect is quite as heavy in later episodes. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's because Mark Hamill was also voicing the Joker, and they just wanted to differentiate it as much as possible.
Right.
But it's the real heavy, like deepening effects on his voice in this episode. Mm-hmm. To the point where it's almost unrecognizable.
Agreed. I didn't remember that until you said something. So
yeah. So he has full double duty, both as the big dimwit zombie. It's like this version of Grundy is definitely a lot closer to like a Hulk.
Right.
Like he doesn't just speak in poems like the comic book Grundy generally does. He's talking like a normal. He says like I don't know if he literally says Grundy smash, but he might as well have. And then that's that kind of outside of that, you have your main Justice League cast. It's a lot of Kevin Conroy, which always a good thing.
Oh yeah,
and a good amount of George Newbern as Superman. Again, still finding his footing in these early episodes. And you get the entire cast. You have Susan Eisenberg, you have Michael Rosenbaum, you have Carl Lumbly, and you have Phil Lamar and Maria Canales as well. So the gang's all here.
Yeah,
literally and figuratively. But
that's good.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I think voice acting is definitely the strongest part of the episode. I don't think anybody outside of maybe Clancy Brown is like really, really good. Mm-hmm. I gave voice acting 7 out of 10. I can't imagine what your score was based on that, but it's good. I don't think it's one of the best, but it's good.
Yeah, I also gave voice acting 7 out of 10. I think that they're, like I said, Ultra Humanite, maybe it's nitpicking. I think, I already shared my thoughts on that, but I think everybody else is fine. Grundy is great. Joker, always amazing. And then you're right, you have some Conroy and Hamill interaction. I don't know what more else you could ask for when it comes to DCAU episodes. So that brings us to our final scores. So totaling up here, Liam, it looks like that I would have a 24 out of 40.
And I, of course, have a very different, 23 out of 40.
23 out of 40. Always by 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as we said, this was sort of an episode that plays well in our minds. And this is definitely like a comfort food episode for me. Like, just because you get all these characters on the screen at the same time.
So rewatchability, yay, nay?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think rewatchability. It's great just to see all these characters interact at once for really the first time.
Sure.
Even if it's not spectacular, and as you mentioned with the Secret Society episodes later on, there's certainly, this might arguably be done better later on, but for the first time getting to see it, it's still pretty noteworthy to see. So I definitely say it's worth a watch.
Agreed. All right, so I guess that will start wrapping us up. Thank you for listening this week. As always, we are so thankful for taking the time to listen to us. Don't forget to send us some feedback. Give us your thoughts on this episode. We'd love to hear some more of your thoughts on these Justice League episodes, especially since they are the newest of all of these episodes that we're reviewing. So we would love to hear that. Don't forget, coming up in just a few short weeks, they're releasing Justice League versus the Fatal Five. We're counting down to that. Woo! We're super excited. We're going to do a review the day that it's released. Super excited and pumped to do that. So we continue in our Justice League monthly, and we got a couple of awesome episodes coming up.
Yes, absolutely.
Super excited about that. Anything else?
No, I think that pretty much wraps up. As always, give us your thoughts at DCAU Review on Twitter.
That's right.
If you're newer to our podcast and you want to look back at some of our older episodes, or if you want to search by show, head to DCAUreview.com. We have it sorted where you can sort by villain, sort by show, anything like that. So,
absolutely.
If you're newer to the show, first, thanks for listening, and if you've been here since the beginning, also thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
So, we just want to hear, as we often say, we just want to hear people talk. We just want people to hear us talk.
That's right. We want people to hear our voices. We want to be heard, and we would actually love to hear from you also.
Correct.
As to what
we would love to hear you in text form.
There you go. Yes. Please don't talk to us any other way.
I mean, never mind.
We're gonna big league you. Anyway, all right. That wraps us up. I'm Cal,
and I'm Liam,
and we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye bye.